literally betrayed them the first chance he got to go and smoke a bong with like a weird, like, camel-headed Mother Joe camel motherfucker. Like,
welcome to Foreplay. We are in the midst of our Hidden Gems arc here. These are films that we've mentioned a lot in the past and that we haven't gotten around to actually inserting into an arc yet. We asked you to say, hey, what films have we talked about a lot that you may want to watch along or you want deeper commentary on? And these are some of them you selected. Some of them, it must be said, we are planning to put into new arcs in the future. These are movies that are spoken about, but maybe don't neatly fit in another upcoming arc that we're already potentially planning. So with that in mind, we did start last week with The Fountain by Aronofsky. We have this week, The Green Knight, which is directed by David Lowery, who also did the final film in our Robert Redford arc, The Old Man and the Gun. So if you vibe with this one, you probably will also vibe with that one. In the next film after this will be Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead, and the final film will be Naked Lunch. So that's our Hidden Gems arc, and here we go with The Green Knight. We've referenced this film a lot because it's a very interesting film. A24. It came out in the last 5 years. It's probably something that a lot of people bounced off of because
I seem to remember was when it came out, a lot of people panned it on social media or said it didn't make sense or some shit, or they hated the ending or whatever, which by the way I love. So yeah, I mean.
it went to, if I remember rightly, it was an Amazon Prime thing, right? Initially.
Yes, I think it was.
It came out during the pandemic, so it got really weird in terms of its release.
And what ended up happening was, because it came, and this is what I remember of it, and it was why I checked out the movie, because it came out in the pandemic and everybody had become terminally online fucking nut jobs, right, during that time. It actually got embroiled in some, like, mad culture war thing where because Gawain wasn't white, there was that thing going on.
I mean, look, it obviously is Netflix casting.
I do want to talk about that because I usually
think that's ridiculous.
I usually don't like it when they do that, but I think it actually serves a really interesting purpose in this particular film. I actually think it's great.
And the fact he is the exact perfect actor for the emotional thing they want to convey, as we'll get to. But yeah, anyway, so, and then the other thing, once the culture war had gone away, there was also, if I remember rightly, all of the female characters are just dismissed by the men. That's the point. Right? So there was that. And then, it was the end. And they were going, well, does he die or doesn't he?
Yeah, a lot of people thought that was, believe it or not, Monty, I'm not joking. The consensus was the ending's really unsatisfying, which is ironic because that's exactly what the character thought before he experienced the last act of the fucking movie. And in fact, I would even start there. Here's why that is a mental take we can work backwards from. Because, bro, the entire point of the movie is he flees that ending, then experiences his entire life and everything he could. They even have that scene where he looks just like the Arthur at the beginning with all fucked up eyes, like, been out on the bender for
and then he's like, wow,
years.
That life sucks.
And then he goes back. And then it's like, actually, that isn't that, because to me, the thing about this movie is it's almost like a fucking Zen koan or something. You can't actually like fully explain it. You have to sort of vibe with the experience. I would even say don't try to understand it because it's mythological. It's acting on levels that aren't about like conscious, rational thought. So for me, the message of this movie, and I admit if I was like 23, I'd probably watch this and go, the fuck's this? It's like shit.
Well, you forgot the other interpretation.
The message of the movie to me is like embrace life. Yeah, this is all there is, so make the most of it, enjoy it, and go for it, you know.
And also, I think the other interpretation or experience that people had with this, which is if you are a fan of the Arthurian romances and you like the original text.
Well, that's almost no one, but okay, keep going, Monty.
Well, if you're me...
that's the point. If you know about Grail romances, you're going to love it.
Put it this way, these two movies back to back, The Fountain and The Green Knight, it's just like me and Duncan are just on easy mode. Like just let Christopher talk about fucking
this is my
Grail
jam.
romance.
And by the way, if you want more of this and you want to, because my favorite part of Excalibur is the whole Grail Percival ending bit, which is the fucking weirdest part of that movie. So if you want to hear about that, go watch the Excalibur show that I did with Doa, where I just go on for like 30 minutes about the Grail romances.
The ultra high def 4K that is out very soon. I've pre-ordered it. I cannot wait.
By the way, we want to do a Knights arc, by the way, guys. But there are
we'll
enough.
Definitely do that movie at some point.
Yeah, there are enough Knight movies. We decided that Green Knight could go in here, and we'll just reference it later. This is the unofficial first movie of the Knights arc.
We do get closer to the inevitable. Richard, why did you make us watch Knight Riders?
We will watch it. But that was the argument that we had behind the scenes, guys, which was one of these, we can't watch Knight Riders because there's too many other good Knight movies. But now that we kicked Green Knight into this arc, we may be able to do Knight Riders now, so we can all suffer together.
People are going to think you mean Knight Rider. You actually mean a film about knights, though.
It's motorcycle jousting, okay, guys.
They run a medieval fucking theme park where they all do stunts, but the gimmick is they all live by like the Arthurian code, right? They actually live like knights while they're on the road, and so all problems are resolved through duels and jousts. It's unbelievable. By the way, right. George Romero made it between films. So we are going to do that sometimes. Not this episode. Now what we will do is I will tee you up, Christopher. Here we go. Hit us with, because you're going to have to do two things. First of all, you're going to have to do a summary of the movie. Second of all, you're going to have to do a deep dive in how this differs from the original poem. So,
all right. So anyway, as I was saying,
just,
some people get precious about this because it is by no means a representation of the original text. And by the way, the original text is not very long, so I would encourage people, if you're interested in, it's a nice like bite-sized, novella basically. So if you're interested in getting into Arthurian romances without committing to some of the epic poems or massive pieces of literature, this is like a really good place to start. It's also, takes place at Christmas time. This is a Christmas story through and through. And what I appreciate about this film is we could have had the rote version of the story and just been really faithful. What I really like about this is a modern interpretation that is using the poem to make a commentary on modern ethics, and a pretty harsh commentary, in my opinion, condemning, in fact, because Gawain in this story is basically a contemporary man who has been thrust into a world of Arthurian values. And he basically fails the test at every turn. And by using Gawain as the character to do this, it sets up really interesting, I think, moral.
Patel was perfect.
It was really good. Yes. And also because, and we'll get into this too, like I said, because he isn't a white British guy or French guy, depending on which Arthurian romance location, like Northern French, right? Because he's not a white European guy, it also helps us to understand that this is a representation of a multicultural modern world, which works because of the themes. It's not arbitrary. It's not shoehorned in there. It is showing us that it is a mirror of the modern world. Okay. So that is how it should be used. And it is very good.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
To conclude the summary, of the film is
let me know when you are up for to rave about the Brad Pitt casting as Gandhi. The point is that would be absurd to you, but the exact same thing is what you just did.
It depends on the themes of the film.
No, because that would never exist. You're acting like that's a real thing. It's not. Here's the thing. In isolation, this is a fine film because it's a good actor and it was an interesting angle anyway. It wasn't a massive issue. But my problem with that whole topic is it's not like it's baseless. Again, it's only done one way. You will never see the Russell Crowe Martin Luther King Jr. movie. It will never exist. But the problem is, Monty, in your colourblind world, it should. By law logic, any great actor, you will never see the Tyrion Lannister actor play the Wilt Chamberlain movie. But by your logic, he's such a sick actor, he should be allowed the chance to audition. You know what I mean?
No.
Here's the problem, Vayav. I'm with you in theory if we do it for everyone. But if we do it for one set, it's like, this is just politics.
Like I said, I generally don't like this. I think thematic within the framework of the themes of this movie, I think this uniquely works. I don't argue for this at all times by any means.
For autobiographical stuff, I agree it veers into the absurd. I think for mythological stuff or ahistorical stuff, I can't.
This movie is already insanely ahistorical. But anyway,
yeah, exactly.
To get into it, this film starts out. So basically, we have the central conceit. Let me talk about the points where the story and the movie overlap first. So the central conceit of The Green Knight as a poem and as a film is that the Knights of the Round Table are having a Christmas feast. They've been feasting for days and days and days. And what happens is a knight who is in the book, in the poem, he's green skin. He looks like a human, green skin, green armor. In this, he's like a tree man, but the concept is the same. The Green Knight rides in on a horse into the hall where they are feasting and is like, let's play a Christmas game. And he's holding a holly branch in one hand and a giant ass axe in the other hand. Same in both film and poem. And the game is this. It's not a very fun game. It is, you get to take a swipe at me first, but whatever you do to me in a year, you have to come seek me out at the Green Chapel and I'm going to give it right back to you. And so who's brave enough to do this? And Arthur's like, well, I want to do it. And then Gawain's like, no, Arthur, let me do it. And so he walks up and he decapitates the Green Knight because he thinks, obviously, if I kill this guy, then how is he going to hurt me later? Then the Green Knight picks off his head off the floor and holds it up, and the head starts talking and is like, hey, Gawain, I'll see you in a year at the Green Chapel. Peace. And then he leaves. And then the whole year is spent in some sort of agony where Gawain's like, I guess I have to go die now. And so he goes on a, must be said, voluntary quest to the Green Chapel, because the idea in the chivalric sense is that this is your duty to fulfill your oath, no matter what the consequences are.
And it's very important to recall as well. I mean, like in the movie, people are saying to him, just don't go.
Yes. But nobody says that to him in the poem, by the way, because that would defeat the point of the poem.
That would, Yes.
But it is very important to note that they say don't go in the movie, because that is what modern people would tell you. That is not what anybody in the Grail romances would ever tell you, because that would be dishonorable. Very dishonorable. Indeed.
Very much so.
So he goes on some adventures that are sort of vaguely referred to in the poem. They put in a lot of filler of these various encounters he has in the film, which are also not part of the text, but are very similar to encounters in other Arthurian romances. So it works in the context of this, and I'll explain why I think these things are good thematically later. So he goes on a variety of weird adventures, and then he comes to what you might call the Swinger's Castle. So the Swinger's Castle, there's a lord and lady in a castle, and it's close to the Green Chapel, and the lord of the castle basically says, hey, Gawain, you're really close. You can go, see this. You'll see the Green Knight in a few days. You got a few days before. Technically, it's New Year's, but whatever. Anyway, the day he has to go die. And he says, okay, I'm going to go hunting. But while I'm hunting, we're going to play another game. Gawain's like, shit, no more games. And so the game that they play is the guy goes hunting, and whatever he catches or whatever he receives, he has to give to Gawain at the end of the day. And in return, while Gawain stays in his castle with his wife, whatever Gawain receives has to be given back to the Lord. And Gawain, so he goes out and hunts, and he's like, here's a boar or whatever. And then while he's gone, his wife is trying to sleep with Gawain, but Gawain's like, no, I'm honorable. And so she gives him like a kiss. And so when the Lord comes back, he has to give the Lord a kiss, which is why he kisses him in the movie too. It's a little unclear, I have to say, in the movie. But anyway. And then the next day, it's like he brings him another dead animal, and he has to give the Lord 2 kisses because he's basically resisting the temptation of the woman. And on the third day, she tries to sleep with him again, and she's like, oh, well, you should take this ring. And he's like, no, I can't take that. And she's like, take this magic belt. It will save you from all harm. And because in the chivalric code, if you are a knight, you cannot turn down the request of a woman. So he can't dishonor himself by saying, no, I can't take the belt. So he takes the belt. Yeah. But then when the Lord comes back, he doesn't tell the Lord that he has the magic belt because he's afraid of dying. So then he goes off to the Green Knight in the Green Chapel, and they do the whole, like, I'm going to chop your head off, and, oh, you flinched. Let's do it again. And eventually it turns out that the Green Knight is the Lord from the castle in the story, not in this movie. So the Lord from the castle is actually the Green Knight, and he, instead of cutting off his head, just nicks him on the neck in the book, because he gave him a small wound because the Lord knows that he has the belt because his wife told him, probably. or he knows through magical means, whatever. And so he nicks him and he says, that's for not telling me the truth or giving me the belt and not honoring your side of the game, but you were truthful about everything else. Gawain is incredibly ashamed by this. And so he then wears the belt forever after this as a symbol of his shame for betraying the truth. And then not only that, but when he goes back to Arthur's court, all of the other knights of the Round Table also make belts for them to wear so that they are reminded to be honorable and tell the truth. And that's the way the book ends. In the story here, it is different, which we will talk about. But that's the basic premise of this. And where the movie really differs is instead of Gawain being a very honorable and respectful knight, the big twist is that Dev Patel's character is kind of a whoring shitheel liar. And he is constantly confronted with his own shortcomings, but also at the same time,
this way, Monty,
he kind of like fails upwards.
You know what George R.R. Martin in Game of Thrones does to like a Tolkien-esque world, where he makes it all murky and grey and more like our world, and people say that's sort of what this does to like Arthurian romances, because as you say, it tries to put almost a contemporary way of thinking about being selfish and egotistical and individualistic onto a framework where actually it's supposed to be about testing virtue and seeing if you can aspire to be great and what does it mean to be heroic, etc. And this is a character that obviously isn't at the beginning. One thing, by the way, I do think made this movie tricky, but at the same time, this wouldn't have fixed it, is as you explained it, right? The problem in this movie is beyond the king being called Arthur, they don't tell you this is Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. They don't tell you that his mother, who bizarrely starts doing magic, is Morgane Le Fay. They don't tell you any of these things. Now, true, you'd still have to know all this lore to understand it all. Similarly, when they do the sequence you're talking about, where he goes to that like Lord's Castle or whatever, that's all also like amalgamating loads of other like Grail romances, like the Fisher King and stuff like that, the tests you have, etc. So the problem is, the real issue this movie has, why I don't totally blame people for not getting it. I do at the end, because that's just a philosophical aspect. But the main body of the movie, it's going to seem really weird if you know nothing about Grail romances and about like being tested, and that these are like mythological and archetypal concepts you play with.
Yeah, and also like they kind of slam.
Like, I'll give you an example. I guarantee there would be very stupid literal people who are like, so wait, so his girlfriend back home who we should have been with then was like also someone else's wife. No, it's just the same actress. Like again, I get it. If you're a very literal person, you can't sort of appreciate mythological films. It's gonna really bounce off. But if you can get into that, it's not a problem. Like I said, this film's just a great experience. Also,
Alicia Vikander. I think the point of her being cast in two different roles is to show his shortcomings repeatedly, right? And she is the repeated character in which the tests he fails in regards to women. Which I think is really interesting. And also, as far as Arthur goes, this is really an amalgamation of Arthur and the Fisher King in one character. And the Fisher King is the king of for those of you who don't know, is the king of the Grail Castle in several Arthurian romances. There's different versions of the story. But the Fisher King is a king who has been wounded and cannot recover the wound, and as a result, the land is sick around him. So in a big theme in Arthurian mythology and British, like Druidic mythology as well, is that when the king is sick, the land is sick. And so
didn't you even think there was that aspect where, like, at the beginning, Arthur's all weary, and then, as I say, at the end, when he's been the king for ages, he's got, like, fucking eyes like piss holes in the snow, hasn't he? That isn't a coincidence. They obviously clearly intended you to take something from that.
Well, also, as I'm sure Monty's about to get into, there's this entire concept that in all the ancient sort of pagan religions, druids have a representation of this called it's the Holly King and the Oak King, and then you go into Celtic traditions, you have this idea of, it's got a special term, but ultimately where you would have a king for a year, or sometimes during a crisis, you would appoint, if there was a famine, you would appoint a new king, and they would live vivaciously for a year, and then you would sacrifice them to the land to fix the problem. And obviously, because of just the nature of history and how concepts and themes sort of bleed through in, it doesn't matter what your faith is or where you're from, these concepts all seem to arise because obviously everything was the oral tradition back then. People would talk, you'd sit in a tavern, having come from this part of the world, listen to a fucking story. You go, that's a banger. Can't wait to go back here and fucking tell all my homeboys in Italy about this. And this shit spreads and you end up with this kind of, all these cross-thematic tales that all have these bizarre similarities, which some people, by the way, now still point to and go, well, that's proof of the divine. Other people go, no, that's proof of like certain themes and concepts are embedded in the human nature. That's a discussion for, for another day, and one that'll never be resolved. But ultimately, what I like about this movie is when Arthur is at his worst, he said, I'm feeling weary. It's the winter. I want to build bridges. All of this stuff right at the start of the film. That's when the Green Knight, very clearly representation of nature, which, he sort of is in the original poem, but that's exacerbated here. He's not just in green. He is a literal tree man, right?
A green man. I mean, he looks like a green man that you see in ancient British art.
Exactly. Yeah,
also, just an excuse, obviously, to do like dope fucking physical effects as well, isn't it?
It's all practical effects. That thing looks amazing.
And Ralph Ineson does talk like he is a tree man.
I know, but what's cool is that in those scenes, he's literally in that tree man costume. There's no CG. It's all practical effects, which is super baller. It looks great.
That's also why I find it amazing. Look, I get that some of the central themes, they don't get it. But like, surely just as a fun film, like, isn't this if you didn't enjoy the actual like plot, surely you enjoy all the visual fucking scenes beautiful. And the incredible things and the lighting and there's some cool ass shit about this movie. It's really fun.
And so obviously the Green Man turns up representative of nature, and he says, do to me what you want, I'll do it to you in a year. I mean, that's life, by the way. That's the ultimate metaphor for life. Like, you can fucking do what you want to the world.
Nature.
Just know to nature. Just know you are mortal. I will have the last laugh. You will be compost, And so it's super interesting, because when you talk about the juxtaposition of modern morality and how we engage with the world, obviously it would be a great honor in many of these cases to sacrifice yourself for something that is beyond you, and that is greater. What's interesting about modern morality is kind of the concept of the individual over the collective, the concept of the pursuit of joy over duty. As those concepts have become more and more normalized in our society, particularly in Western societies, you look at the horror, and now the idea of sacrificing yourself to bring life to something, it's a nightmare. It's the Wicker Man. No, I don't want, it's
which also this ties into the fountain with the, him drinking the sap of the tree of life, right?
Yeah. Like, I mean, that movie is all about him essentially coming to terms with death as being a part of the cycle of life, an essential part of it, and that there is something afterwards, that you give yourself over to this cycle of death and rebirth, but it's not for you, like, consciously. It's for the universe. This is a very, it does have some sort of thematic overlap. Because ultimately it is tapping into those old Celtic and Druidic beliefs that ultimately, sometimes you have to die to like re-energize the kingdom, the domain, the land. You are part of nature. You are not something separate from it. Conceptually, the movie starts out incredibly strong, and as Duncan says, you don't even, for me, I don't think you have to have an understanding of Grail lore and know that that's King Arthur and she's Morgan Le Fay and understand Gawain was his nephew and all this stuff. You don't have to know all that stuff. But, like, obviously it enriches it if you do. I mean, when I watched this the first time, I was like, wait, this is different to what I remember. I read some Grail shit back in the day. I was very much into that. The fucking Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade kicked that off, I believe, as a kid. I'm not like Monty. He probably got it from like, I was just browsing through the family library and I found a scroll. And it was the original.
I wrote my undergraduate thesis on Wolfram von Eschenbach's Parsifal.
Yeah, I watched Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade and said that all that stuff about going to Iskenderun sounded fucking fly. I'm going to start reading about this. So I'd read the original as well, and I knew immediately this was different, and I knew immediately what they were going for. And ultimately, yes, how do you make the audience engage with concepts and themes that aren't really relevant to your society anymore, that you insert the main character to experientially be you.
Yes.
And
modern
so
person.
Like, yes.
And by the way, I'll be interested to hear what your guys' experience of this movie is, because for me, I have to admit, the first time I watched this, I was really mad at this movie for 99% of it. because
they can't catch a break, the people making this movie, can they?
They even made a movie for Monty.
Exactly, and he's like, it's not exactly as I wanted it, though.
No, listen, because...
Not quite. A little bit too hot, this porridge, really.
We talked about this with the Northmen, but one thing that really triggers me is that when you put in the modern values to the mythology, like that is a giga trigger for me.
Which I agree with that too.
And so for most of this movie, I was like, I hate this. Why? I hate this guy. I hate, the character of Gawain. And then by the end, I was like, oh, I was supposed to hate him. Excellent. Yeah. Great. I really love this movie because of what it does. But to me, if you're watching this for the first time and you know the source material and you love the source material, I think it's a hard watch because I place a lot of emphasis on the values of the Arthurian romances. In a way, this is how I choose to live my life. And in that way, it can be really tilting to see that represented so badly. But when it comes time to the end of the movie and you realize the whole point was that it was lived badly, and it has, I think, one of my favorite endings of any movie ever, it really hits home and it does an amazing job. And what this really is a male initiation story at the end of the day. And the reason why I say that is because there's a bunch of stuff in the middle of this movie between when he leaves Arthur's court and when he comes to the Swinger's castle. And what happens is in the poem, that's not really fleshed out at all. It's really just, there's not really anything there. So what David Lowery did was he took a bunch of similar stories or stories that could exist in Arthurian romances to show this journey. And so much of, let's say, the Grail quest is characters just kind of like tripping over themselves, fucking up, being immature, because all of the entire point of the characters that are engaged in Arthurian legend for the Grail quest is that they themselves are undergoing individuation psychological process. They are coming to adulthood. They are coming to understand what being a man and having duty and loyalty and truth is. They fuck up a lot. Percival rapes people and realizes that was wrong. Percival finds the Grail Castle in Parzival.
And he's meant to be in Percival. Don't they dub him the purist?
Percival, but he's innocent. He's naive. Yeah. He's naive, and so he does things like rape women. I know it sounds weird. He rapes women because he's naive. And he is shown later that is very wrong. But Percival finds the Grail Castle in Parzival. And what's so interesting about that moment is his mother, and this is very relevant to this movie, his mother told him, do not ask stupid questions. So what happens is he's talking to the Fisher King, or the Fisher King's talking to him, and he never asks the Fisher King the question, and he must ask the question. The question is the thing that relieves the Fisher King of pain and heals the land. But he just sits there, and he doesn't ask, why are you hurt? Why are you in pain? He doesn't show empathy to the Fisher King. He just kind of sits there, and then he leaves, and because it's a myth, the castle just goes away. It just vanishes, poof, like that. And he spends decades finding it again. And that's supposed to be a point of, it's great to do what your mom tells you, but at a certain point you have to be a man and utilize your own judgment and show empathy and show sympathy for people. And he doesn't do that. And so he gets another chance and succeeds in the end. But this is the whole thing. All of these stories are about that process. So when you see, what's so interesting about this film is when you see Gawain and he's wasting his entire potential. And Arthur, men need older men who are not their parents.
I mean, Arthur himself was fucked up a bunch as well.
Sure.
It was the boy king, right?
The whole Guinevere issue, the Lancelot stuff. Anyway,
Lancelot stuff, yeah.
The point is that Arthur is, I think, in my opinion, having done a male initiation ritual, I think men need non-parent male role models to help individuate. I did. I needed that. And so what Arthur says, and what's so sad about this movie, is Arthur says, I believe there is greatness in you. He's believing in Gawain.
Is it wrong to want greatness for you?
I fear I'm not meant for greatness.
And Gawain is such a piece of shit and doesn't, keeps on his whoring and his drinking and his carrying on. He's living like a child, listening to his mother, who is an evil witch. His mother is basically creating spells, and she makes the belt, the invulnerability belt in this, which is different than the poem. But it's he has to wear that he's under the auspices of his mother's protection. And he's not going out into the world. He's not facing danger. He's mommy's little boy who can't grow up and is just going to keep on operating on his base instincts. And even when he has Arthur there saying, there is greatness in you, I believe it, he's too cowardly to embrace that future. And yet, there's something that drives him to seek the Green Chapel all the same. And I think that this is a really valuable lesson for young men, because I personally believe that drive towards this spiritual awakening and this drive towards duty and this drive towards truth inherently exists in the male soul. And you need people to encourage you to go there. But even with a little mild push, you won't run away like a little bitch,
Yeah, I mean, I think initially when he first sets out from the castle, and again, I'll bring Duncan in on this. My reading in the film is he's doing it almost out of shame. Like, he kind of knows he has the tippy toe out the front door, because if he doesn't go, everyone's going to be asking him, yo.
But he could just run away.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, true.
But he sort of doesn't he? Like, think about it when the guy from fucking Banshees of Inisherin comes along.
Barry Keogh.
Like that, essentially, he doesn't say, I'm the knight on this journey to go and do this thing. He's sort of like trying to hide who he is, isn't he? And it's like, you sort of feel like he's almost doing a half-assed version of going and doing
But that's the point.
That's a nice axe you got. You do some fighting with that axe?
Here and there.
Here?
Only there. Here, I'm just passing through.
To where?
I go north.
North? Oh. North is the direction, all right?
We're here in our Hidden Gems arc of Foreplay. And if you want the hidden gem of the audio world, you might check out Raycon. Now, why are they hidden and a gem? Well, they're significantly less expensive than comparable earphones because they actually sell direct to consumers. So they can give you quality and features at about half the price of other major brands. As you can see here, these are their essential open earbuds. These wrap around your ears if you don't like something in your ear canal. And I've used them at the gym. They do not fall off, guys. So if you want to hear the environment around you, these sit on the outside, or if you don't like earbuds in your ear canal. They also have over-the-ear headphones, if that's what you're interested in. They have earbuds that go inside your ear canal that offer excellent active noise cancellation and awareness mode. I use them whenever I travel now. I've used them in the subway here in Korea. I've used them on planes traveling between America and Korea, and they are very effective at blocking that sound out. And just with a push of the button on the earbud, they will switch over to awareness mode, so you can instantly hear what's going on around you while listening to your favorite shows, like Foreplay here, of course. They also have multi-point connectivity. They can connect to multiple devices and switch seamlessly without a hassle. And they have 36 hours of battery life, 8 hours of playtime, and 36 hours with the charging case. So, of course, all you have to do is charge the case up and pop them back in there. They will charge very quickly. I have never had these inconveniently run out of battery ever. By the way, you can try anything you want on the website, and if you don't like them, they have a 30-day happiness guarantee, so there's no risk to trying out Raycon. Plus, it helps us here on Foreplay. The Essential Open Earbuds are here to help you crush your New Year's goals. Go to buyraycon.com/foreplay, that's Fourplay, open, at the end, all one word, Foreplay open, to get 20% off site-wide. Thanks to Raycon, you hidden gem, for sponsoring our show.
No, but that's what I'm saying. It's like
I love that.
He doesn't embrace it even when, like, it's kind of almost like Barry Keogh is speaking for the audience there. He's going, "You look like a knight, you look like a knight. You're traveling like a knight. You set up to do. So, but are you a knight or aren't you?"
But just change those words. You look like a man.
Yeah, exactly. Are you a man?
Are you a man?
Also, there's another element that I will say will be really hard for some people. Again, if you only enjoy like a Hollywood film where everything is real and literal and nothing can have dream logic or be mythological, then it will be really, really hard to understand things like where people are going, "You're inside the castle," like all that shit. Like because another thing about this movie is you could interpret it as sort of like a fever dream or a fantasy of what happened, but the whole time you're actually just waiting for this final act to happen, which is is a metaphor for life as well and all that jazz, isn't it? Yeah.
But I mean, but also like these little vignettes, like you're talking about with the bandits, show how he is naive and also how he isn't behaving like a knight. So, for example, generosity is one of the core tenets of knighthood, and he has to be reminded by this kid on the battlefield to like toss a fucking coin. Man, gave him directions, tried to help him, and he's like, "Hey man, can you help me out a little bit?" It's like that behavior is ridiculously unknightly, by the way. You fucking help your bro who just helped you. And he gives him a pittance, and then you'll notice the effect of that is, sure, that guy's not a good guy. Maybe it would have happened anyway. That would be a modern interpretation. The modern interpretation would be, well, that guy was going to rob him regardless if he gave him all his money or not. I don't think so. Usually these stories and mythologies come about because you fucked up. Like if you gave that guy an appropriate amount of money and like made his day brighter, that guy's not going to come back and fuck with you. He's not going to be the one who robs you.
But that scene is also kind of reminiscent of the scene at the end and again I think it's great. It does this like tracking shot where right he's lying down tied up by a tree. It goes all the way around in a full circle and it comes back and he's dead.
Yep.
Right, it's just his skeleton. I mean, been there obviously a while. It's bleached bone, all the clothes are tattered and rotting. And then it goes round again and it comes back to him in the same position, very much alive. And it's like, what I think that's like priming you for the mechanism at the end. And I think that scene is there to help explain the ending, right? It's like, look, he's projected himself into an alternate future. That's not very nice. It's like if I do nothing and stay under this tree like a pussy, I just die and I'm bones and it was all for nothing. And by the way, no one around here gives a fuck. In fact, no one's coming. Like my bones are going to stay here unmoved, like unmolested for fucking decades, if not centuries. So I've got to get my ass in gear, got to get my shit together, and I better get out here using my own guile and wit. It's why I've always said, like, for me, this movie is if you're like an anxious person or you're somebody that struggles to kind of throw yourself into situations that you need to do to have a fulfilling life, this is probably the movie for you if you just absorb it, on an allegorical, metaphorical
the
level.
Arthurian romances are for you too.
Yeah.
There's actually a little anecdote. I think I've even told this one before, a story rather. There's a mythological story. I think it's from like Hindu mythology or something that this reminds me of, which is a classic metaphor for life. It's one where it goes that basically there was a guy, I think it might even be a woman in the story. The idea is she's being chased by tigers and she comes to the edge of a cliff and she goes tumbling over the edge of it, but she manages to grab onto a vine like a cartoon, right? And then the problem is she looks down, so above there's the tigers waiting. She looks down, there's more tigers below at the bottom. She can't go anywhere, right? And even worse, on the vine she's holding onto, like an actual cartoon, she looks and there's a little mouse nibbling on the vine itself, and so it's going to break eventually. But then she looks, and on this little outcropping of outgrowth, there's just like one strawberry that's grown on a flower. So the message is, you just eat the strawberry, that's life. You start with the tigers, you end with the tigers. It's going to end anyway. You can't have it. The whole point of the movie is you can't actually flee your destiny either way. Like, if you notice, by the way, you could even argue by not dying in the original telling of the story, well, all of his vice comes back to haunt him in his life and leaves his life hollow anyway, and he doesn't end up with his true love, and he doesn't have the things he should experience, etc. So ultimately, like, you are better off like standing for something, having purpose, having meaning, even if that includes dying.
Yes. Which, by the way, I mean, look, I don't want to jump too far ahead. This is where cards on the table. I think the movie is obviously more satisfying because he doesn't die at the end, right? What the knight has done is teaches him a very profound
on this one
lesson.
They make it ambiguous though, don't they? By just
But
leaving him...
my interpretation has always been when he goes, because He could have took the blow, wore the sash, lived that life, been a pussy. It's miserable. Might even ascend into the throne via the lineage. But one day that sash has to come off, and when he does, his head falls off, and it's all been for naught. It's all not been worth anything. He lived a life of a craven, liar.
And the funny thing is that he's the only one who knows that.
Notice as well, that
really
is something that's actually
absolutely.
quite deep and poignant in every single mythological story involving like immortality. It's even in the notion of the vampire. It doesn't really work. Eventually, everything becomes hollow, and you're just a fucking wretch. And you don't. What you really dream of is being young forever and experiencing everything anew. But you can only do that once, can't you? Is kind of the point.
Exactly. And so when he takes off the sash, which obviously the knight knows what that sash is, he knew the whole time. He takes it off and he goes, right, now I'm ready. And he goes, right, good lad, you are indeed a brave knight. And he goes,
Now. Off with your head.
now off with your head. And I always took the specific reference of off with your head to be, because remember, it's about modern interpretations and modern sensibility. I have now changed your mindset. That was the whole point of this.
Yes.
Off with your head.
Well, it was about his
initiation.
personal growth. He had
Think
to do
about
it.
like the most famous initiation in the Western world is Freemasons, and I can tell you the most low-level one is you're just in a coffin and they basically say you have died and now you're like reborn as a Freemason. Like essentially, that is the notion of initiation for a boy. Anyway, it's the idea the boy dies so the man can live, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, and so also my interpretation I think is bore out because there is a post-title scene right at the end where it has a young child picking up the crown he was wearing at the start, the golden crown, you know, the thing he was wearing, and I just interpret that to be that he went home and he did live a fulfilled life, one with children and purpose and drive, not this frivolous whoring nonsense.
What I think is so interesting about the end of this movie is that this movie is like 30 minutes longer than you think it's going to be, because by the time he gets to the Green Chapel, we then are treated to a very, very long ending sequence that goes through his entire life after he returns. Because he literally just pussies out of the Green Chapel. It's like, oh, sorry,
Which, by the way,
I gotta go.
We've obviously referenced this 1 million times. Has also, Richard, mad allusions to sort of like fucking occurrence at Owl Creek type shit, you know? It's obviously got that sort of thing baked in there as well.
Yeah.
So he leaves, and then we find out later that this is like a alternate universe that probably he is seeing a vision of. And what I think is so fascinating about this entire thing is that, like we said, he fails upwards. He becomes king, not because he has virtue, not at all. I mean, and this is also the fact that he wouldn't become king because he has virtue is antithetical to literally the Arthurian court and the Knights of the Round Table, because Arthur was blessed with the ability to pull out the sword and the stone because he was very virtuous, right? He is the chosen one. He's the pinnacle potentially of chivalry. It becomes Galahad later, but whatever. Galahad eventually kind of takes over that. But anyway, so he leaves and he's just like, oh, everybody's so happy to see him. And then he has this kid, but then he gets rid of the mom and pays her off because she's a disgrace, because she's a whore, and he has to marry somebody respectable instead. And he eventually loses his son in combat, loses the war, the enemies at the gates breaking down the door when he takes off the sash. And of course, his head falls off because that's what should have happened to him if he wasn't immune. But basically, in this story, not in the original text, in this story, the sash is a symbol of his mother's protection and his mother's influence on his life. And the point is that he never gives that up. What would your mom tell you in this situation? Your mom's not going to tell you, a woman will never tell you, go get your head chopped off because you promised somebody you would get your head chopped off. It's not logical, but this is the
also just not the role, is it? Like your mom's supposed to be the one that tells you stay safe, and then your dad's supposed to go for it, and then you meet somewhere in the middle, don't you?
And we love moms for this, but in order
to thought an obvious illusion as well, Monty, is you could take the sash to be like the umbilical cord.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Providing life, etc.
Yep. I think that's great actually. And the idea here is that he's always been protected by his mom, and he's never taken the risk to become himself.
Remember at the beginning of the movie,
child.
they ask, tell us a story, but he's never had any adventures yet because he's just a young, naive guy. And then the whole thing is the idea that everyone has to have adventures. You have to go out into the world and make something yourself.
In the context of the Arthurian court, Arthur asking you to tell him a story about an adventure and you having nothing is just inconceivable. Like, all of them have something. They're all out there being knights errant and questing and whatever, constantly for years at a time and then coming back.
Tell me a tale of yourself, so that I might know thee.
I have none to tell, King.
So it's really beautiful in the way this is portrayed, because at the end, you could look at this and you could say, wow, he's just a normal guy living a normal life. But only he knows the shame. Only he knows the shame of having fled. He could have lied to everybody at that court. And what is so interesting about this is that is a metaphor for the modern day, okay? For 99% of human society, if you were a piece of shit in your hometown, you were going to get punished big time. Like, if you went out and raped somebody, guess what? All the men in your town, in your tribe, they're coming to fuck you up, because that's somebody's daughter or wife or mom. And you can't just leave, because if you try and leave the town over the hill, you're at war with them. They don't know who you are. They're going to fucking kill you.
Also, a lot of people don't get this. Another thing that people don't appreciate is you actually couldn't back then just go to another town and just start living there. They'd be like, who the fuck are you?
Yeah, exactly. You might be dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
especially as a single man, sometimes obviously historically, we're talking very broad strokes here, towns would get together and like marry into each other so they wouldn't inbreed, right? So it's not, but if you were just a single guy and you're walking 100 miles away from home and you show up in some random town, they're going to view you as a threat to like their marriage prospects. Like, they don't want you fucking there for the most part. You could be dangerous. You could be a spy from an enemy. Who knows, right? So this is 99.9% of human history. Only in the last 100 years have people been able to be like, well, you know what? I don't really like living in this country. I'm just going to take a boat and go to this other country and just never see anybody I ever knew ever again. And I commit a crime and I flee somewhere else and then I just get away with it. That is
not to mention the distance between settlements at this point in time and the methods of travel meant that if you went to go to some far-flung place where you wouldn't be known in hopes of a fresh start, you probably just get murked on the way, or you starve to death, or you drown, or your horse breaks a leg. It just sucks.
The world was very dangerous.
It really sucks.
But
we talked about this on the Witch episode. It was like, that was the folly of Ralph Ineson's character in The Witch. It was that, listen, he wanted to be a pious man. He wanted to show respect to God. But in doing so, by at the expense of being cast out of community, he doomed his entire fucking family. Out there at that time, there do be dragons. Fact.
Yeah.
And that's the joke is they would have died anyway, even without the witch. They would have had bad crop and then they'd fucked some up.
And that's why all of these stories, throughout human societies were like, oh, I traveled this long distance. And then just like in this movie, there's just giants. Who's going to tell you there weren't giants? Maybe there are giants. Nobody knows. Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
So my point is, though, is that he, when he is told by his girlfriend whore to just leave, that is modern advice. You can't just vanish in this time frame. And when this story was written, the idea that you could just go away would be inconceivable to people. There wasn't an escape from, that's part of why, these codes existed with people, was to keep society functioning, right? Chivalry is important because it keeps men in line and useful to the greater good, as opposed to just being deviants like he is in this film. But there is no real, running away from this. And at the time too, throughout most human societies, there wasn't running away from male initiation. You were going to do that. The society would force you to do that because it was necessary to make you a functioning human being. And not a fucking useless
by the way,
piece
one
of
thing
shit.
I thought One thing I thought was interesting is even in the alternate projected timeline where he gets to be the king and experience all the like wealth and shit like that, even in that when he's marrying like his arranged marriage instead of the woman he had the kid with, notice how whenever he interacts with any of the women, there's like a lecherousness to his sexuality of like he's not like he has like there's almost like a perversion when he's even sleeping on like the wedding night with that woman. And obviously the scene in like the Fisher King type castle where the woman just basically jerks him off or whatever, and then just says to him immediately afterwards, "You are no knight. You just failed one of the most basic tests, mate."
Yeah.
You are no knight.
Yeah, true. I mean, look, obviously as well. I mean, there is this kind of like, there's again, Monty's better equipped to talk about this. There's this idea of being chaste. If you're going to be knightly, that there is some, in waiting for marriage and only making love to a wife and only to sire strong heirs. That is the knightly way to do things. And obviously, we've talked about this in like, again, other films, right, where it's like, and obviously as well, speaking from the movies I know about, there's a reason why you always get killed in a horror movie after you decide to fuck, right? I mean, we don't end up with Friday the 13th if we don't have this knightly chaste standard in medieval society way back when in the Dickens, right? I mean, there's nothing new
there's
under
a
the sun.
standard to courtship, right? Which is that the lady is supposed to give you her favor, which is why, you see, by modern terms, these ridiculous things like, "Oh, milady, I'm jousting for you," and she's like, "Here's my handkerchief." But this would have been a great honor because you were representing the lady in combat, and there was you were winning her honor, and that was the whole point. And you were courting her in that way. You were showing your strength and your fidelity. Now, there is a lot of having kids out of wedlock in the Arthurian tales, and obviously one of the core conceits of the Arthurian romances is that Lancelot is trying to steal Guinevere.
Yeah,
but that's not
his ultimate knightly test, by the way.
Yes,
because he had no peer or equal in combat.
Yes,
so
yeah, but
he has to be tested.
They even in the world and society had also built like a moral standard in the sense that even if you are like the king's bastard, unless you're really lucky, you will never have status. You will always just be some fucking urchin, and you will. And so as a result, the consequence of even sleeping out of wedlock is your child might just be fucking wander the earth and just be some peasant, basically.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, obviously, the results, which is not favorable of the whole Arthur, Guinevere, Lancelot love triangle, is that Arthur dies and the kingdom is dissolved and Excalibur is returned to the Lady of the Lake for the next true king.
The joke in the myth is we're supposed to believe in England that we're waiting now for him like Jesus to return, and that was when England will be
the once and future king. That's where the title comes from, is that
By
the
the
Lady
way,
in the Lake will appear with the sword again for the true king sometime later.
Wish she would hurry the fuck up.
Another reason why I can't understand people bouncing off this movie so much is, to me, the obvious parallel, and this guy even literally made a film about the Fisher King, is Terry Gilliam films. Because every Terry Gilliam film is working with mythological machinery. He even has like fucking Carl Jung shit sprinkled in there, archetypal stuff. But if you ever watched a Terry Gilliam film when you're a kid, you don't pick up on any of that shit. You just watch for the rad fucking graphics and the cool monsters and the weird like physical effects. And again, surely you could enjoy this film just for the Green Knight guy and the fucking giants walking around and the fact that like suddenly he's dead and then he's not, and then there's this mysterious castle and you meet this beautiful princess who's testing it. Surely that alone is mysterious and has a mystique to it and a fucking aesthetic enjoyment. And also, I will say about this film, because as you say, it's very long, it is definitely a film that rewards patience. If you demand answers immediately, you're not going to get them. Like, you have to watch the whole film and sort of think about it a little bit. So if you're hoping they just serve you up answers early, it's not that sort of film.
Yeah, I mean, obviously as well, one of the things that I like about the film is the way that it does beef out the original poem with these, like Monty was saying, these are archetypal stories. They're not literal transposed stories from other myths. Like, for example, I think when he reunites the body with
the Saint Winifred story.
That's I obviously I don't know the
So Saint Winifred
the
her head was supposed to be a spring. I think it's vague, but
By the way,
as far as I know, it's an
thing.
invention of David
I'm not
Lowery.
even joking. When I say this, you'll immediately remember this. But I think because there's so much in the film and it's so dense, even though it's not obvious, I think people forget this detail. It literally has chapters, and the names of the chapters refer to sort of different. It's literally like a fucking almost an anthology for fuck's sake, but about one guy's journey. Each section is that's how they.
It also just
go
entirely operates on dream logic, but again, you just have to view this as the path to.
Yeah, but as we pointed out, Monty, there are people who literally have spent fucking thousands of words on what is the blue fucking triangle or whatever at the end of Mulholland Drive, and it's that's not really the point, is it, bro? It's not really. You kind of lost in the sauce on that one, mate.
Yeah.
So
is it an alien tesseract?
Yeah, exactly. Because they think
view...
if they can figure it out, it'll make it all make sense. It's the whole point is never going to make sense, is it?
If you view this as Gawain's journey to individuation or manhood, then the Saint Winifred story, it operates on dream logic because he does the right thing in that story. She tells the story about being raped and being killed, and he, one of the very interesting things that I love about this story is that at the end he's like, well, what do I get in return? And she said, why would you even ask that?
Yeah,
a knight should never ask that question ever.
Yep.
If I go in there and find it, what would you offer me in exchange?
Why would you ask me that? Why would you ever ask me that?
Yep.
It's not about what you get. It is about doing the right action. And the right action is clearly to help her with her fucking problem, especially because she's a woman.
You've ever read any of these stories? Spoiler, you just get the fucking reward at the end anyway, don't you? It's like that famous one of fucking, what's his name?
Well,
Solomon. When he gets, God says, ask me for anything. He's like, I could ask for wealth or power or women. And then he goes, wisdom. And then he goes, well, you are so wise, you get all this shit. And we're like, I get it all anyway. I get the whole whatever you call that, Sunday thing where you get the car and the holiday. And
but what he gets, what's so funny about that is obviously the axe was stolen.
Sunday showcase or whatever it is,
The Green Knight's axe was stolen from him. Because he needs it to bring back to the Green Knight because that was part of his
I feel
vow.
so sorry for people also why are you taking that axe everywhere with it? Well, fuck me, mate.
They literally
it's not
say
for you. You know what? You're right. Just tune out.
But what's so funny is it was stolen, and then once he does the right thing with Winifred, he gets the axe back. It's never really explained how that happened. Again, you just have to. This is myth, man. The whole point is. Do wrong thing, be naive, don't be generous, get axe taken away so you can't fulfill your oath. Do correct thing, be generous, receive axe back so you can complete your oath.
I mean, we haven't even talked about how he befriends a clearly paranormal fox.
Yes.
As well, halfway
Who,
through
by the way,
movie.
essentially also gives a speech that is, implies that that's I don't know, some sort of familiar of his mother or something like that. 'Cause it has the whole thing of sort of come back or whatever. So no, by the way, that's right. This is what I say. It seems like a simple film. It's incredibly dense, actually.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of chatter online at the time as well about what the fox represents. And obviously, the literal heads are like, well, nobody's mother, Morgan Le Fay, practices magic, and it's probably an astral projection of her literal self to watch over him. And it's like, which, by the way, in Arthurian stuff, definitely possible, but that's not what I interpret it to. And
by the way, in a lot of night stories, there are people just disguised and people play different characters. As you say in the original Green Knight,
concept of a familiar,
that guy is
all that
the king.
Stuff.
Is the one of those?
Yeah, of course. But I mean, for me, what I interpret it, why I think the fox is there, is ultimately yes, it is. It is a representation of what his mother might whisper in his ear during all of these adventures. Obviously, she can't be along for the ride, so it's a representation of that. But it's also just a representation of almost like self-preservation, like a self-preservation instinct that he is having to battle against, because ultimately it's the quintessential form of selfishness, isn't it? If you put yourself first above everything, that I must... Right.
It's also highly unnatural. The concept of duty is one of the most unnatural, human-crafted things that you could possibly imagine, because it's not about self-preservation, survival. You have to fight against every screaming voice in your head in order to go to that green chapel, and that's the whole fucking point.
Yeah,
it's the whole point.
If you think about how... how society would function if nobody had any sense of obligation where they could put even their own safety in the rear view. society can't function. Like it actually can't. Who would be a police officer? Who would be a fireman? You know, I knew a guy way back when we used to play rugby with him, and he was one of the voluntary auxiliary firemen. And it was in a small Welsh town. And basically, whenever there was a fire, if it was a bad one, they brought in the auxiliary. Whatever he was doing, he was on call, he stopped, and he went. And he died in a house fire, right? But everyone else got out. He just got caught up in it, you know? And it's like, wow, think about that. Like, you know, just take a moment. That is a dude with his own life and his own family and with his own interests and hobbies. And yet he puts all that down to go and help people when there's a fire in his community, and it claimed his life. Like, what a guy. You know what I mean? What a fucking guy. And without those types of people, we're fucked. We're actually cooked. Like we cannot exist. You know, like it's we need people who can embrace a sense of self-sacrifice. Because if you don't have that, society can't really ever progress beyond a very selfish. Well, what's mine is mine.
But you know what I love about what you're saying is that when it comes to this film, what it shows is that in the modern world, you can fail upwards without these ideas.
Oh, sure.
And
he's also a Nepo hire and
sure,
as well.
But in old in mythology or in the Arthurian romances, it would not be possible without great virtue, even if you do have human flaws, without great virtue in order to rise the ranks. And everybody aspires to that, no matter if they're rich or poor, or they were, born as a relative of somebody within the court, right? There is this idea that everybody is striving towards the same thing, and you are measured based on your worth, not on your origin. So everyone is motivated to continue, right? And I think that this gets to what I would say the core of one of the modern male psychological diseases which is what Gawain suffers from in that flashback at the end, or flash forward, is that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if he's king. It doesn't matter if he has all of these accomplishments and money. He's got the wealth. He's got the wife with status. At the end, when he dies, his son died, and the only thing he's thinking about is how he failed himself. And the ultimate problem of this film is that he has to live with the decision he made. He has to know that he is a coward forever. And
that version of him isn't fit to rule a kingdom.
No.
And as a result,
and he knows
dooms everyone around him, including what I'm sure in that moment as he has that vision is a profound sorrow for a child that doesn't even exist, because he knows that he's incapable of making the right decisions because he hasn't gone through a period of personal growth. And it's true, people
but
don't...
it's a question of what is greatness. And I think people idealize people for the wrong reasons these days, which is they look at their outward status and don't ask, what is the inward virtue? And I think it's a huge problem in the modern world. And ultimately, there can also be people who appear to have virtue, as Gawain does, because I assume everybody in the court thought that he went and wasn't killed and was very brave, but he wasn't. And he's the one who knows this. But when you die at the moment of death, it doesn't matter if you have that status. The only thing that matters is if you don't have that shame. That is the ultimate lesson of all of this, is that the most important thing is the virtue of your character, period. That's the most important thing. And outward trappings cannot give you that. Even if you have sycophants, even if you're famous, even if everybody tells you you're great, you must believe in your own virtue. And you must walk the road that is righteous to you. Otherwise, life is meaningless. Yeah, I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, no, it really is like the ultimate... Like, at the end of the day, in your last moments, it's just you. Like, it's just going to be you, and you're going to have to rationalize in that moment, like, all the decisions you made. And
it's also the burden you carry with you for your entire life. It will haunt you forever. Yeah. And, like, you have one life to live. Who wants to fucking live that life? That life blows. There is no amount of money you could trade me to live that amount of to live that life. None.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think obviously as well, what's kind of bold about the movie is this is why I thought the culture war thing was so fucking misplaced. This is actually right, and sorry, I'm gonna speak chud for about 5 minutes right now. Okay, so there's not many movies that actually tell men that type of shit anymore, right? It's just true. Like it's just
it's not
media.
popular. It's not popular to be told this.
And what I thought was interesting was I didn't get why the movie wasn't more championed by the people that were quick to criticize it, based on, the Dev Patel being in the lead. I'm like, this is a movie for you guys. This is everything you've been.
It literally is about being a strong man. So if you are part of like the manosphere, in theory, you should love this movie. You should love it.
No, but that's the failure of people that don't realize the manosphere is containment to ensure young men never reach real manhood. Because actually, a manosphere person, Monty, would watch this and go, "No, you do the ending where you get all the pussy and you fuck the bitches, and then you get the vote. And why would I risk myself dying, you loser?"
And then at the end, the Green Knight comes in and high fives him.
Exactly.
Of course, that would be the cool angle because again, unfortunately, it's that's over individualization. That's like being selfish, isn't it? And that self-aggrandization. So if
the
anything,
Green Knight gives him a Bugatti.
That's the false quest. That's the one where you go down the wrong path and then you think that's all life is, isn't it? So like that's unfortunately why I think they didn't vibe with it. I know what you mean, Richard. The people who claim they want true masculinity, this is more like it. Yeah, absolutely,
completely. That and it's an interesting point. Again, I know we're getting off the beaten path, but. It's one of the things that always makes me laugh about the manosphere because obviously, Andrew Tate was the big one, and there's always been a guy, by the way, for as long as I've been alive, there's always been this one guy.
Go watch Tom Cruise in Magnolia.
Exactly. There's always been like the one guy who tells like vulnerable, weak men with problems on the internet,
but this is what I'm saying. Men need this role model. It's just, it is abuse. The role models, the people become the thing that then abuses the thing that the men need. It's filling a void.
And notice the difference is the one who fucks you over is the one who tells you all the things that are like honey in your ears. Yeah. The one that is you need is actually the guy who tells you the thing you don't want to hear, the thing you don't want to face in life.
Which by the way, is Arthur saying there's greatness within you, but the implication of that is, but you have to do hard things, and nobody likes to hear that. Like, for example, when I did my initiation, there was a million reasons I could rationalize not to do it. Not my culture. Why the fuck am I spending a year of my life doing this? This is a waste of time. You can, and there's not a society that was holding me there. The only thing that kept me rolling was the feeling that I had to do it. I must do this. It is my duty to do this. And it got me through it. But lots of people drop out, man. I can tell you, we lost like 80% of the guys that I started with.
I can imagine, it's like, again, you have to set yourself, you have to, like, sometimes, right, like, one of the things that I hate about the kind of, again, the manosphere and the way people pull men across, they tell them, they go, it's hard to go to a gym and it's hard to have a routine. You got to work on yourself, so you need to do it and you need to push through this, and it's hard to accrue wealth and no. But it's actually a lot of those things are not spiritually nourishing. Like, yeah, you look good, you get laid, cool. Oh yeah, you figured out a way to make money. By the way, the greatest grift ever is telling people, pay me and I will tell you how to make money.
Enjoy my subscription service.
Yeah, that's the ultimate one, right? But then it's like none of these things will make you masculine in the spiritual sense. None of these things. It's empty. Like people, it's ephemeral. It doesn't have any value in the here and now, and a lot of it is quite empty. And a lot of these people lead very empty, shallow lives. I mean, and they're not remembered. It's why I can mention Tate now because he's Vogue. I struggle to remember the pre-Tate guy and the pre-him, and and it's like, because they're all saying the same shit and they all lead the same lives. And I guarantee you, when they're alone in a room, it doesn't matter how much they got in the bank, how many sports cars they got in the garage, or what fucking cool brandy they're sipping on, or what fine cigars they're smoking, or what fucking woman has just crawled out of their bed. They're going to have the same existential crisis that all of us motherfuckers are going to have. They might just look better while they're doing it. But if you don't fill the fundamental, hole in your life that is to find a pathway to do something that matters and matters to people around you and is profound, there ain't no point in being here.
And this is where I think modern society has failed men, because there isn't a funnel in which people can be initiated that can learn these values, because inherently they are values that you're not going to be able to achieve on your own, most likely. You need some exterior force forcing you into a position that is uncomfortable, and you need to be pushed culturally. Many people need to be pushed culturally to be there. And these are the experiences that cause you to break out of your shell and to realize your values. And in the absence of this, I think it's my personal belief that this is where we get a lot of men's addiction issues, men's suicide issues, because people are ultimately left without purpose. In a world where we are told by science that we are a tiny speck in an uncaring universe, you have to find a different purpose for your existence. And everybody is constantly living these days with, for the first time in human history, with the weight of knowledge that what you do is pointless, and we ultimately live in what we are told is a nihilistic universe. And yet we have to keep on living. And what does that mean?
Well, that's the thing, Monty. That only exists if you think about yourself as an individual on the scale of all life that ever existed. The whole point, as this movie shows you, is if you actually engage in acts of like virtue and chivalry, then you actually have incredible impact on people around you and the place you live, which will not only enrich their lives, but in doing so reflect back, enrich your life and give you purpose, meaning, and all the things you just asked for. The problem with this as well is this does tie into what the manosphere like basically takes as an impulse and perverts, which is there has been a very real war on masculinity. When you were a boy, I've actually had these hand-me-downs. Every fucking comic and book, bro, is like become a soldier, become an adventurer, become a sailor, become a warrior.
Every myth is like that as well. Every single one of them.
There's another one. Even your job is you become a craftsman and you do something like that. You don't just do it because it's like that gets 1999. You do it because you do an excellent job and the people in your town now benefit from gourmet fucking foods
status.
and incredible
It is very important that there is
that's also the
from
key
this.
thing, Monty. If you do the chivalric things, like I say, it might not immediately seem like it, but it will pay you back in the long run. If instead you do it all, by the way, and you sacrifice yourself for everyone, and then everyone goes, well, of course, you're a white male who's a patriot. Well, then why the fuck would you do it? That's why someone goes, well, fuck it, I'm going to go the Andrew Tate way and get the Bugatti and fuck everyone. It's all about me. I need to calm and have the joint and then go to sleep and then fucking sleep on satin pillows. Like, you can see why it's really easy for people to go off the tightrope the wrong way. You know?
And people would do that less if they, again, to come back to Monty's point, there would be fewer instances of that if they understood that discouragement, by the way, is also part of the knightly journey, right? Like,
yes. By the way, if you notice, there's an element in this which I never understood as a boy, because as you can imagine, that's why I'm a nerd in gaming. I wasn't the fucking rough and tumble outdoors guy who was sort of in this man's world, which is the thing that puts you off when you're the mama's boy is you can't go through the hazing because you need your dad to sort of tell you and your uncles to have already done it to you to show you that like that's just like the way that men like bond and then check that you're legit and that you're not going to be a fucking coward and backstab everyone. But then I always think the best example ever on this is the movie 300. If you watch the movie 300 as an idiot, you will go, look how ableist they were to that guy. He literally betrayed them the first fucking chance he got to go and smoke a bong with like a fucking weird like camel-headed Mother Joe camel motherfucker. Like that guy, that's right. You shouldn't let him in the Spartans. That guy will literally betray you and sell you out for fucking essentially like a Twinkie in a fucking joint. Like they were right to haze that motherfucker, and when he couldn't take it, fuck off, mate. That's also part of like accepting your place in the world, you know.
There are many indigenous cultures.
I mean, that sounded way cooler than it was. That scene was whack as fuck, mate. That was the worst scene in the movie.
There are many examples in indigenous cultures of where basically as part of a male initiation, and these arose independently all over the world of each other. So there's, when things tend to arise all over the world without any real connection, you think there's some psychological truth to them.
Yeah, there's got
so
to be
in many of these cultures,
that's connected to within yourself.
Part of the start of a male initiation is that the male relatives and the men of the village literally come to the boy's house and remove him from the house physically, while the mother's like, don't take him, and then they take him away into the wilderness to go do a ritual. And so, like the actual male members of the community,
I just don't even complete. It's all right.
Literally, I don't even know what Monty's saying right now. I've just seen Duncan hurling a Philly Arties off a cliff, bro. Like,
all right. Yeah, basically, I could have saved them in the whole movie. Just get that. Basically, he's just like, and that's running, shoulder bar just got off the cliff. I don't like, get the fuck out of this movie. You absolute rat.
And that's how the Spartans won Thermopylae.
Yeah, exactly.
Fucking hell. Let's talk quickly about some of the mechanics in the movie, though, because we've talked a lot about themes. I think, first of all, this movie is an incredibly good-looking movie for considering its budget. I mean, it had a $15 million budget.
Oh, okay.
Like, wild. It's wild how good the film looks.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
mega.
And I was looking into this actually, and like I said, the practical effects on the Green Man, but also he was using a lot of kind of old school film effects. So, for example, in the King Arthur's Hall with the Round Table, a lot of the background is actually a painting, like they used to do in other in older films.
Yeah, where they put it in the camera, and
like Charlie Chaplin shit. Yeah.
Yeah, well, funny enough,
even
the
Star Wars did that.
Yeah, the reason he did that is because he wanted to. He thinks Bram Stoker's Dracula is like, with the Coppola movie. He thinks that's the best. So it was like, it's one of his favorite films. So he wanted to do an homage with the practical in-camera effects, which is like really cool. Also, some great on-location shooting. I mean, like, just some great choices. That crooked tower that keeps coming up. That's a real place.
Yep. This all filmed in Ireland.
Yeah, which again, thematically strong. It's just a really, really good looking movie. My only grievance with it is the lighting in some of the scenes is so everybody does it these days. It's not a critique of the director. It's just everyone goes for this like natural lighting now, and I hate it. I like my lighting to be, like we talked about Dario Argento. You know what I mean? It's
sure.
Like, the lighting is fucking totally unrealistic, hyper unrealistic.
I mean, the joke is now you suddenly watch, like when we were watching Ben-Hur and stuff. It's amazing. It's all just lit to fuck, but it makes it so vivid, doesn't it? Like the color's crazy, yeah.
Whereas
which also is a contrast.
Movies,
I mean, the visual differences between this movie and Excalibur, where Excalibur is like lights everywhere, nights so shiny, sword, like the red background of the sword being grasped and going down under the water of the lake at the end. It's like it's really, by the way, vivid.
This ties into another problem because essentially the issue you're getting with here is it's the push for realism, but where realism has no place is a fucking story. It's famously the reason why people say the dub is so like the sound mixes are so shit on modern movies, because again in the past you dubbed it all and you did it with like a mic next to it. They wanted it to sound like this would be like if I was recording a real conversation. We're not doing that, mate. It's not a play. You're supposed to just be letting us all hear the conversation. We're not really thinking when we hear them all in our ears coming through a studio, like, that's amazing. He's actually a meter behind, but I can hear the volume at the same. You don't think of that. It's a fucking plot, isn't it? These things are thoughts that you don't have. You're fixing problems that don't exist, and I think actually creating problems, because the same problem with the sound is definitely the same problem with all this lighting, because I agree. It's why, like, when they make all these remasters on Blu-ray, sometimes they fuck the whole movie up, because they'll put, like, a different colour filter on it. You're like, why have you done that? Again, it was like bloody Lord of the Rings, mate. Again, I'm not in the real world, am I? Why do we have to have it be what it would really look like to have a proper camera and film it, what the eye would see?
I mean, Game of Thrones took a lot of heat for it in its last couple of seasons. In a way, you can maybe make an argument that the biggest crime for a lot of it was the lighting and not the writing. But spoiler, it was the writing.
Oh no, that whole thing of like the battle
for
the night or whatever was mental, bro. You could bet it was like some people that you were looking at like a house fire, like who's in there? Is someone crawling around? Fucking hell! Can I just sing it,
and it's like, I mean, this is the problem. You compare it like cinematically to some of the stuff it did earlier, back when it was supposedly had a smaller budget, and the battle scenes are so well choreographed. Everything's visible. There's like a really good visual, storytelling element to it. And then you just got to that last couple of seasons, and it's like, who? You're like, what? What's happening? Like, it was really bad. And I just think there's many examples of this in like modern film, and unfortunately there are some examples in this, and it I don't want to say spoils it. I think this is a beautiful movie. I think it looks fantastic. I mean, right from the start, the opening shot where his headset's on fire, and it's doing that zoom in, like, you're in for a visual treat, and not just a visual treat in the sense of what's going on in the shot. But I mean, like, some of the really some of the visual choices are really interesting. Like the giants, it's not even a major scene. It's like he's just walking across a mountain and there's some giants there. But the look of the giants is so arresting and weird and otherworldly.
That's why I'm shocked by the budget. That's incredible. They could squeeze that out, that much money.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, like, color palette when he's at certain parts of the quest.
I love his gold cloak.
Great. Yeah,
also, the other reason, Monty, why this is obviously in like Robert Eggers' fucking territory is also because the reason why British films are like that is you just cast out of a limited pool, and not everyone's doing massive movies for $20 million each. So everyone's willing to be in everything. They all work every week. So what's cool is you can always have all the, like in this film, you'll see it. There's loads of actors that just have small parts. That's like you'll see that person in many, many movies.
If you remember when we did The Old Man and the Gun, and I called him Timu Robert Eggers, and Monty said that wasn't fair, and I said it's actually a term of endearment. Like Ralph Ineson is in this. Kate Dickie is in this. It has that feel. Where it's kind of
you say Temu. I prefer to call him British Robert Eggers.
I mean, sure, we can do it that way. But like I think this is again like a super strong entry in his canon, and I really like this movie. And I think the performances are all solid, but the movie is carried by Dev Patel. Like, he is so good in this film. And, so for people who don't know, like, Dev Patel's, like, kind of arc, Dev Patel's the guy, obviously, who burst on the scene with Slumdog Millionaire. And I don't,
as a kid.
I don't like that movie.
No, the movie's ass.
It's just a popcorn flick, isn't it? It's just forgettable.
But I really like Danny Boyle, obviously. But
exactly. That's why I can forgive it.
Yeah, but I don't like Slumdog Millionaire. And then it was kind of like, well, what's he gonna go on to do? And then like his next movie was like he played someone in The Last Airbender, and then
this guy. What advice was he getting in the casting?
Yeah. And then it was like he did. There was another. It's a forgotten one. It's the South African robot movie. It was the guy who made District 9 did a follow-up about
the one like Chappie or whatever the fuck. There you go. That was it,
I think he's in that. And then it's like, wow, this guy's done a ton of ass films, and everybody thought he was going to be like this super, big actor. He'd obviously come into movies off the back of being in Skins and everything. I think that, like, since the fucking Green Knight, I think he's like leveled up his game, and now he's one of the guys where I'm like, I want to watch him in movies. Like, I definitely do. I watched that Monkey Man movie that he did. It's fucking so good. That's like a little mad guilty pleasure movie that I saw in the not too distant past. I think he's got charisma. I think
he also directed that movie. I see. Interesting.
I think his on-screen presence in this film is essentially, this is his real arrival. Forget Slumdog Millionaire, child actor. Forget all that. This is like.
Oh, he's great in this.
Yeah, this is. I mean, it carries the film. Like, without a central protagonist that can convey all of the right emotions, very often without dialogue, because he is just walking.
I really admire the fact that if you were pitched this movie and you went and you're like, oh, I'm going to play Sir Gawain, and you read Sir Gawain the Green Knight, because Gawain is honorable and he is a knight. None of this like, oh, I'm not a knight and I have all these vices. Basically, accepting a role where you are going to be the shit version of the thing that people know is bold. It's a bold choice to take on that role and to take on that challenge. And I think he does a very good job.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it got like, it was on a bunch of like lists, but I don't know if it won any awards, any worth talking about. But I mean, like the performance of him is absolutely central to the success of the film. And it's like, look, it's great to have, Alicia Vikander, who obviously was great in Ex Machina, right?
So like, good.
It's great.
She's an A24 favorite.
Yeah. I mean,
also, as you see when she actually plays the like queen type, but she's a very good-looking person if you put her right.
I mean, she also delivers.
She has a regal quality.
We didn't even talk about it, but she delivers the monologue about the red and the green, which is a beautiful piece of writing.
Yeah.
And like such a great like little poetry moment. But it is this is so stylized. It's almost like a Shakespearean soliloquy in tone.
Red.
is the color of lust, but green is what lust leaves behind. In heart, in womb.
And she just goes on and on and on about the meaning of the color green. And she delivers it excellently. And it's hard to do something that abstract for that amount of time and be compelling while you're doing it. That's tough acting.
Yeah. And obviously, look, I mean, like, just shout out to our boy, our low-key favorite on this podcast, Ralph Ineson. He's only in it for a couple of scenes essentially, but he's perfect. There was a great piece of direction, actually, that he was given. He was told, don't think you're the Green Knight. Imagine you're Santa Claus.
At the end.
Well, no, that was
the whole thing. I heard that about the end scene when he was doing the off with your head, which is a great director's note.
But he's like, because obviously it doesn't really come across in the movie because it's kind of horrifying. Right, but like he's meant to be mischievous. It's all fun for him. Like, you do whatever. This is how I'm entertain myself. You chop my head off, I'll chop your head off in a year. See you then. Right? Oh, spoil it was all a test. Lol. You know what I mean? Like, so that's how he was rolling. But I thought Ralph Ineson just like nailed the fucking tone. Like, he actually obviously he's got the voice, he's got the gravitas for a role like this, but also like playing something otherworldly and the deep booming rolling voice, but also the delivery of the lines.
I'll tell you another piece of a fun little trivia fact about this movie and Ineson. So apparently he's very good at riding horses, like expert horseman. And so he was supposed to ride this horse obviously a real horse in this costume into the hall. And when the day that they had to do this, the horse was just not listening to him. It was being a piece of shit. And even he, who is very good at working with horses, couldn't get it to do anything. Turns out the horse was in heat. And so they couldn't control the mare that they were using. And so they had to quickly build like props. So they made like a dolly for him to ride in on so you could get that shot like behind him riding in. And they made like a fake horse that they could turn around. And then they got a different horse later on to film the shots that they actually needed a horse in. But I just thought it was funny that they got a horse in.
I'm glad the story went in that direction. I was like, what's happening here? Fucking, he just whispered in its ear with his manly voice, and the horse was pregnant or something, So. But yeah, I mean, look, it's a really, really solid small film, and one that I think because of the timing of when it came out, and again, shout out to A24. We don't have to sing their praises any more than we already have multiple times, but doing this kind of deal where I think it was out on IMAX for like a week or a day or something. They did like an IMAX release. Bet it looked amazing in IMAX. I would have loved to have seen that, but whatever.
And just the look of the film too. What I love about it is the abstract visuals, like the head catching on fire. I love the part that they showed in the trailers as well of the calendar. The wooden calendar moving. I love the puppet show because that just underscores, what's so funny about the Gawain thing is it shows what it's like to be in a small community where everybody thinks you're so great because you were the one who stood up to the Green Knight and oh my, wasn't he brave? But then at the end, it's literally them having him be at the Green Chapel and his own head getting cut off. Imagine just being exposed to that 24/7. You're just walking through the streets and somebody's doing a puppet show of you being decapitated. It's intimidating, right? But it shows the expectations that other people have and the virtue that you are held in. And then he has this imposter syndrome about it because he doesn't feel that way himself.
He got that mad fucking stand innovation, didn't he? From everyone, right? And all the knights at the round table were like, yeah, finally, you're fucking one of us, bro. Like, now go get your fucking head chopped off, dickhead. Like, it's like, fucking hell. So yeah, I mean, it's just a really good movie, and I hope people can engage with it for its themes and the allegorical and metaphorical nature of it all, a la The Fountain, which is why we did it in this order, because obviously the movie that's coming next is very literal, absurdly so. And it's just, I just think it's a really profound film that people missed the point of. I think a lot of people bounced off it because they wanted a literal understanding of the ending, even though I think my interpretation is just objectively
I think it's just very clear. He lives a shit life, knows he did, and then he does the right thing at the end. It's not complicated. People just don't want to think like that. People have been trained by the modern world to reject the lesson that this movie gives.
Yeah. So it's a great film. I knew it would be right up Monty's alley. One of those movies where it didn't make a lot of money, but I definitely want to get it on Blu-ray and watch it all blown up because I think it's such a good-looking movie and such an interesting movie. Just a great film and a great time.
You have any final thoughts, Thorin?
No, I mean, like I say, I actually do think if you're one of the people who watches this before you watch it, if you find you just can't engage with like the mythological aspects, then just watch it for almost like the life lessons. That's a good angle. Or just enjoy the sumptuous fucking visuals. Like I can understand why people might find it confusing, but I never would find this movie boring.
Definitely.
It's quite long. But as I say, it rewards patience too. You have to sort of let it unfold.
All right. Well, guys, that'll do it for The Green Knight. We will be back next week with Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead on our Hidden Gems arc. See you then.